Hello, FloodGate family. Thank you for joining us on one of our LinkedIn Live events. And I am happy to announce we've got Shawn McCarrey here with us. Thanks so much for joining us, Shawn.
My pleasure, Joe. Glad to be here. How are you?
I am awesome. I am awesome. Reason we asked Shawn to join is I get calls all the time from business leaders, sales leaders, commercial leaders. You know, they're scaling. They have a new product launch. They need to really bring a team around us. And Shawn and I were discussing at a recent convention, about that challenge. And we thought, hey, you know what? I would love you to share your experiences and thoughts on this unique challenge when it comes to commercializing in med device. But before we begin, Shawn, I know a lot of people know you in this space. You've done a lot of incredible things, but for those who don't, can you give us a little bit of background?
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. Thank you. Real brief. So I grew up in a household. I grew up in Michigan, and my father was a vice president of sales in the auto industry. So I witnessed his life, right, and his work and participated in some of that. So if he was entertaining customers and they had teenagers or whatever, I was invited along. And I thought, wow, what a great lifestyle, to convey messages and value propositions and build relationships. Maybe I'll do that, as I choose my career. And so that's what prompted me to get into sales, frankly, and eventually sales leadership.
Yeah.
I started, right out of school. I went to work for Xerox as a sales rep. So my first sales job up in Detroit for a couple of years, and then was recruited into the medical industry, and quite frankly, never looked back. I mean, I started with C.R. Bard, a Fortune 500 company. But after that, moved on to some smaller emerging medical companies and Hospice Medical and Oxygen. And really, that's where I found my true love was being more involved in smaller companies that you can help scale and really have a profound impact on the company's future and your fellow employees. And it's been a labor of love, for the last really, 20 years.
That's awesome. And guys, I'm going to ask some questions, but we've got a really cool feature on this event. If you just comment below in LinkedIn a question that you have, we'll be able to pull it up at the end, and we're going to take some of your questions. So if there's something we don't cover, type it in there. You think about it, type it in there. We'll hit it and get Shawn's insight on it. But Shawn, you mentioned, really that passion in scaling, teams and that small company to that growth stage. What are the top three things that you found that are most important when you're engaged in that endeavor?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first of all, if you're with a smaller organization that you're going to scale, then you have the opportunity to build your own team to some degree, right? And so I think first and foremost, it's first you have to identify what skill set do I need as a sales leader with this emerging company to reach, not just reach, but perhaps exceed the goals that we have in mind as leaders, right? So I think it's identifying the skill set and then creating a compensation plan that's going to attract and retain that skill set,
right?
You believe is required to help you be successful.
Right.
I would also say that, as you build that compensation plan, you want to make sure that the goals of your sales group are consistent with that of the company, right? I have been in situations where maybe they're two different goals in the terms of the number, and then it makes it difficult to talk about, was the month, was the quarter, was the year, was it a great year or just a good year, right? I mean, it's important that you have a common language and a goal that you're striving for. And then I would say that one other thing that would be, as you're hiring your people, the other thing that's important is what's the structure look like? You're going to you're looking at the map. In this case, let's say it's domestic, it's US. Well, what does the structure look like? What kind of talent do I need? Is it sales reps and clinical specialists? Support? Is it how many region sales directors will I need to support this group as I scale it? So there's a lot of questions that you have to ponder, but really, I mean, that's the fun part about this role really is getting involved in all these different considerations because it's more of an art than a science. But again, it's something that I really love to do. It inspires me.
Yeah, no, that's great. So really, well, three things I kind of heard you say is make sure you know what the objective is, that there's alignment across the organization of
Right.
what good looks like.
Yeah.
Have a comp plan that motivates and inspires,
Yeah.
and know where the structure is going to be. One of the things I've heard others say, and I've done it myself, is on that side is create an org chart 3 years from now, and a lot of times your name as the leader is in many of those boxes right now.
Right.
But then it's easy to visualize as you quickly grow. Okay, I'm going to take myself out of that box, and here's the person that's up and coming, or I need to hire into that. Gives you that visualization of it, right?
Yeah, and if I could, I would add a fourth or a 3A, and that's the other piece that's important is make sure that it's the right talent, right? I mean, there's a lot of folks out there that aspire to be sales professionals, and they may be better suited for other roles, but maybe not the company that you're hiring for. So I think that's critically important as well.
Okay, cool. And this might dovetail into that is, the common mistakes, right? Yeah. Is that, so what do you see as the common mistakes as someone entering into this scaling stage?
Well, first of all, I would say that, hiring is critically important. So if you take it too casually, you may be disappointed, and so will the new hire, right? Probably. Mm-hmm. So I think that you've got to give it the attention it deserves. The other thing is, of leadership style, right? When you think about whoever's going to be managing those new hires, to me, that first line manager can make or break, the new hire, the territory, the region, and perhaps the year for the company, right? So it's I think there's certain styles that can inspire performance, and there's others that can actually deter it. And so I think that's another, you want to make sure that you have sales leadership in place that's going to inspire others to be great, right? The other thing I would say is, be a great communicator, because if you under communicate, and that's a watch out. I would rather over communicate. So people say, wow, this guy's, it's not just, how does it taste? How's the sausage made? I'd rather communicate what's going on, because remember, you're communicating up and down as a sales leader, and you want to make sure that you're communicating in both directions. And then I would say that the other thing is, and this is critical, as you make these new hires, striking that balance, when somebody comes on board, let's be frank, I mean, new hires are always being evaluated. And so it's a trial period. They're kind of evaluating the company. Did I make a good choice in my employer? And the companies, they're sizing up that new hire, saying, gee, did we make a good choice in our hire?
Right.
And so what happens is sometimes folks are a little slow getting out of the blocks. And so, there's this temptation to put these folks on probation, right? And then if you do that, then what is the right plan? I mean, is it 30 days or 90 days? What are the goals? And so I think that's an area that, I think that we have to be very careful about, because I have seen, and I can count on two hands, reps in my past that maybe got out of the box kind of slow, but turned out to, ended up being on stage at the end of that year or a future year, right, as a Chairman's Club winner, rep of the year. And had we been too quick to pull the plug on those folks, we would have never had them on stage, or probably enjoyed the revenue growth that they delivered. So that's a big watch out.
Yeah, that's key. A lot of times, especially, are the activities and attitudes correct, right? Because those are usually the precursor. Sometimes numbers become the laggard, and
that's right.
That's right. And having that leadership that has that positive attitude, that right leadership with the right motivation that can fire the team up, that can drive them forward, and help probably create that culture, right? So, I would imagine. Right?
Yeah, and you're spot on with that statement that sometimes it's less about, what percent of quota are they versus are they doing the right things? I mean, is the blocking and tackling, is it there? Are they doing the right things? It's just a matter of time before we start to see the fruits of their labor start to become more obvious. And so I think that's the important thing as sales leaders. It's okay, let's not get too consumed with the sales report. If we're doing our job as good sales leaders, we know what they're doing. We're in the territory with them. We're having conversations on a weekly basis. We are giving them guidance. We're giving them constructive input into what they've done and what they could try differently. I mean, so that's really, we share that responsibility with the new hires. And I think that's something we can't lose sight of.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome point. And kind of getting, being close enough that you know the reality and
Absolutely.
not just not what the numbers are, right?
Absolutely.
And on both sides, because some people hide under rocks, right? And some people will are absolutely doing the right thing and just, the dice isn't rolling their way right now, right? So
absolutely.
A lot of that lines into that culture, right? Creating that culture in an organization. So what did you do? How did you create culture from the beginning? What were the keys there?
Well, you know what? So this is, there's a saying that you tend to manage as you've been managed, right? And so I think what I've had the luxury in earlier in my career to work with different managers and different styles. And what I did is I customized, for lack of a better term, a style that I thought worked best for me. So there were opportunities where I'd say, wow, someday when I'm a sales leader, I'm going to do things this way. And there's other things that happened in my career that I said, gee whiz, I think I won't do that as a manager. I know I won't approach a topic that way. So you kind of learn as you go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I think culture is critically important. It may be the most important thing we talk about today because there's technologies and products that are great and disruptive and can sell themselves, and innovation in life science and medical devices. But if you're in a situation where you're miserable or you're not growing professionally or you don't feel appreciated, then you're probably going to leave, especially in this day and age, right? So the great resignation age, right? I mean, it's just you want to make sure you give people plenty of reasons to stay as opposed to looking for the exit. And I think that a couple of things, and I've rarely been the smartest person in the room, honestly, regardless of the size of the crowd. But one area that I'm very comfortable is my style, my leadership style, and again, getting back to that, you tend to manage as you've been managed. Early in my career at Bard, there was a manager I worked for, and he taught me something that I didn't realize till after the fact, and he made me feel special all the time. I mean, and I learned from this gentleman that it was less about the numbers and more about, he cared about me and the welfare of my family. And so once I realized that his interest was genuine and it went beyond the spreadsheet, then I wanted to walk through walls for this guy. And so because I wanted to return the favor, because he cared so much about our well-being that I thought, gosh, I owe this guy. I can't let him down. I've got to do a great job in my territory. And so it taught me to really step up and respond to that kind of interaction or that leadership style. So that's the style I've tried to adopt, is let people know you care about them. And of course I care about the numbers because we're all judged on those, right?
Right.
As salespeople, if you're not a salesperson, typically you have a performance review once a year when you're a brick and mortar job, right? As salespeople, at the end of every business day, we're being evaluated on how well we did that day, that month, that quarter, that year. And so that's important. But what I've learned is if you support people and care about them and your interest in their welfare is genuine, then they will walk through walls for you and with you quite frankly. So when you stand up in front of a room and say, hey, we had a great year last year, we grew 38%. Congratulations. I've got even better news. We're going to grow 45 this year, and I'm going to show you how we're going to get there.
Yeah.
And nobody's eyes roll to the back of their head. People aren't at the first break aren't calling FloodGate Medical, say, get me out of here. They're, they believe because we've got a plan and they believe in me as their leader. And so that's a style that's worked for me, Joe. And I don't see that changing anytime soon.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know. I was reflecting on what you were saying and some of the, Gallup engagement questions, right? And one of them is, does my manager care about me? Right?
Absolutely.
And it makes a difference. It starts with, even old Stephen Covey line, no one cares how much you know until they know that you care. And so it's a simple fundamental, but so hard to do and missed by so many. I agree.
Well, and it's important. And and let me just say, there's a clear distinction between being somebody's friend and being a good manager. And that's
Yeah.
something else I would just share with the group is I've seen managers fail that try to be friends first, and then managers second. And what happens is when it comes time for a tough conversation, they can't have it because their friendship gets in the way, right?
Mhm.
On the other hand, I've had plenty of friendships that have developed through my management interaction.
Correct.
And so it's not to say you can't become friends. It's just you don't lead with that as what you have in common, right?
Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the last thing I would say about culture is, is the sales leader, you're responsible for selling up and selling down, and it's all part of that communication. And so, I would want to make sure that the rest of the leadership group and the company, other departments know what's going on in the field because I am the voice. The sales team is your constituents, and so
Mhm.
you got to make sure that you're communicating to the home office. Hey, here's what we're seeing. Here's what's going on. Here's what we're doing, right? And then the other thing is, I learned early on to be collaborative because sometimes sales can be, put in its own silo or a bucket, and that's not healthy for any organization. You want to make sure that you have a good working relationship with marketing and IT across every finance, across every discipline in the organization. And because the reps don't have that interaction on a regular basis with the other leadership or the departments, it's my job to make sure that I'm the ambassador for the sales group. That's
Yeah.
important for the culture.
That makes total sense. That makes total sense. Yeah. So, we talked about a little bit before, right? Is that key of setting that compensation right to keep that
Yeah.
engagement long term, even with excellent leadership. If
Yeah.
you're not making the money, if someone's so and this is a conversation I have a lot of times with, sales leaders, CCOs that are creating the comp plan that's going to lag probably behind results, right?
Yeah.
And revenue. You can't say, hey, you're going to get 15% because it's going to take them a year to get that, get things rolling. So what have you seen? What would you recommend, someone, how they structure that potentially?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, so I think first and foremost, every sales goal, regardless of the size of the company, I think has to be realistic. And what I mean by that is a good sales goal, in my opinion, is always a stretch yet attainable, right? Because that's the best way that you're going to do all the things we've talked about earlier in this conversation. Because you want to make sure you got a comp plan that's designed there to reward pay for performance, and you want to get the talent and they can get there, right? And so you have to have a plan in place that they think's fair and reasonable, both the company and the employees. So if you're with a smaller emerging company, then you don't have this big base of revenue, right? And so you have to start somewhere. And so you got typically this new technology, this innovative product that the clinicians aren't aware of yet and haven't started adopting. So it takes some time to grow your revenue. So in the meantime, there's things you could do and that I've employed that have worked. And that is sometimes early on, maybe you have, when you think about a comp plan, it's comprised of base salary and you got variable income, which could be commissions and or quarterly bonuses or year-end awards. And so early on, what I found helpful is maybe you pump up the base salary a little bit so that balance goes a little bit higher on the base, at least the first year as these folks are getting established and the technology is getting established. But you make sure that there's appropriate goals in place that they can meet with the proper stretching and success. And so they're still getting the variable income. You still want to pay for performance and you want people to stretch. So beyond that little higher, the mix of base salary being a little bit higher, you're also rewarding the real performers with variable income, whether it's a quarterly contest, a year-end contest. You establish a president's club, which we've done. Take your top reps and their spouses to glamour destinations in Europe. You do all the things you can so that they feel, hey, okay, I'm being properly recognized and rewarded for my performance.
Yeah, it's funny. I probably couldn't tell you how much I made in bonuses years you would go to President's Club, but I can always remember where I went. Right, mm-hmm. It's very funny. So a lot of people undervalue those little things, but usually it's what people remember and sticks with them. So
absolutely.
Sure. What question for you about determining deployment? right? That's another thing. You get comp models, but then how do you usually structure where to put people, right? Or how to set that structure you talked about to envision to begin with. What is that?
Yeah, and that's something I really enjoy doing. And so what's worked for me in the past, and what I might recommend is, regardless of whether it's a region or nationally, as you think about scaling a group, you want to make sure that, typically with these smaller emerging companies that I've enjoyed working with, it's not as if they have these unlimited funds, and so you have to be careful on your spend, on your budget, right? So first thing you want to do is create a heat map and say, okay, where is the opportunity?
Yeah.
If I've got limited resources, where do I put my chess pieces? Where do we start? Right. And another question that you have to weigh as a young company is, because money might be a little tight initially, is do I go direct rep or do I go distributor? Or is it some combination of the two? Because, there's pros and cons to both. A direct hire, a W-2, that's my preference when possible, when we can afford it, because I have complete mind share. That's the real benefit there. On the other hand, distributors or 1099s, that's more affordable labor, right? Because
they have better access, already, right?
They have relationships, right, that you can leverage. So if it fits with the products in their bag, it may not be a bad way to go. The other, approach that I've taken in the past, which has worked well for myself and the companies I've been with, is a hybrid approach. Where this heat map I was talking about. Well, where are the procedures? Where are the patients? Where are these cases being done? Where our device could be employed? Well, then what you do is I would suggest creating a priority list of hires. Like, where would I put my direct hires? Probably where the action is heaviest, like in the major markets, right? And then you're not going to hire necessarily. You don't typically hire 40 reps out of the box. So you create this priority. Where are my first 5 or 10 reps? Where would I deploy them, right? And then if they're in the major markets, do I really want them traveling 2 or 3 hours or 4 hours to make a call? Probably not, to some rural market. That might be where I say, hey, let me find a key distributor that can cover that area for us. So again, in aggregate, it's the best return on the investment as you build out your structure.
Right. No, that's awesome. I've got a few, for time's sake, just because I'm looking at, our timing, we have a couple of questions talking about structure here. This is from one of our LinkedIn users, name didn't come up, but when you do your first hire, prior to your first product launch, I think is the question, your first sales hire. I mean, when do you start commercializing, do you train them ahead of time or get it out and then hire? What's your recommendation there?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a right or a wrong way to do that, Joe, but it's a great question. I think the timing's got to be such that you don't want to bring somebody on board too soon that they really can't leverage their expertise and grow the revenue before the product's approved. But I think you want to be, if you have the time and the budget to do so, I think you want to have identified your talent, been through the proper hiring process. You have a pretty good idea when you anticipate approval. Be ready to rock and roll, and assume the best. And if the approval gets delayed a little bit, that's fine. Make sure your group's trained up and ready to go. So that'd be my recommendation.
Okay, yeah. So, because I know as soon as you're ready to sell, that's when the board or the investors start going, okay, where's the return? Show me the market, right?
Absolutely, you bet.
They wanted it yesterday, right? And so we know that.
Exactly.
So, I have another question for Jacqueline. What are the top qualities that you look for in potential employees from fast growth startups? What are those qualities you think they need?
Yeah, well, great question. And I think that one would be that you want somebody that's got the energy, that they're willing to stretch, that they're going to put in the hours and the effort to be successful. They have to understand that it's a smaller company, and so they may have to wear a number of hats. It's not like they have a marketing team of 100 people to support them. So they might have to wear a couple of hats, initially. But the other thing is, somebody that's willing to contribute to the conversation, because especially when the group's smaller, you want to invite as much input as you can to say, hey, what should we do? What could we do? Right. How can we do this better? How can we do this faster? So I think you're looking for somebody that's, somewhat of a self-starter in the sense that, they don't need somebody to hold their hand. They're professionals in their craft, and they know what to do, and you're there to support them. So I think those are all, different elements that I would look for in a new hire for a smaller company, a startup.
Yeah, no, it is hard, so that wrestle between getting that level of employee that understands the industry, self-starter, knows where to go, but then having that comp plan that kind of aligns to that goal, right? So it's getting a few of those people that can attract them and hold them long enough, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So good. I'm looking at some of these questions here, scanning through. I actually see Jaden. He likes you so much. He's wanting to see if he can come work with you, but probably not the option right now, there, Jaden. But I like it that you see that leadership in Shawn. He's definitely that guy. So no question. So guys, that's kind of questions we had. I don't know, Shawn, if I really appreciate you taking the time and imparting your wisdom, your experience with us and the whole FloodGate family here to be able to, understand some of these key questions that I know we get a lot of times, and you've been down that road. Guys, if there's questions that come up, you can comment below. Both Shawn and I will be looking at if we can answer that through comments. We will. And Shawn, thank you for taking the time today. Really enjoyed the event.
It's my pleasure, Joe. And if I could just leave the group with two thoughts. I know we're running out of time here. One is, I'm often asked the question, hey, do you promote from within or do you hire somebody from the outside for certain roles? And I can tell you that using an old baseball term, tie goes to the runner. I mean, if I've got somebody internal, I think it's important that you promote from within as long as they've got the skill set that they can grow into that role. And the last thing I would say to the group is that, there's a lot of sales managers out there, but there aren't that many sales management professionals or experts, in my opinion. I mean, so I would ask you to, aspire to be the best in this group. Take pride in what you do. Savor the moment. Look forward to standing up in front of your group and helping take them to new heights, greater heights than you ever imagined, because it is very rewarding. It has been for me, and I'm sure it's been for you. And I want to thank everybody for their time. Joe, thank you for the opportunity to communicate. It's nice to see you again, and I wish everybody all the best. Good show.
Thank you so much, Shawn. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
You
Thank
bet.
you.
Bye all.